Welcome to episode 2 on the GED Extended Response. If you have not already watched episode 1, I do recommend that you watch that video first, then watch this one. So in episode 1, I give a good broad overview of what the expectation is for this particular section of the test. Here in episode 2, we're going to look at it deeper, how to think through and analyze the two passages and what you need to do, how you can actually word things. Then finally in episode 3, I will go through and write an essay with you. All right, let's get started. First of all, let's do a quick review of the requirements just in case it's been a while since you watched episode 1. So, what is your task? You are going to read two passages that each hold a position on a particular topic. You are then going to figure out which position is stronger. After you've decided that, you're going to write an essay explaining the two positions and explaining which one is stronger. Easy peasy, right? What do they want from you? You need to write 4 to 7 paragraphs. They're going to want 3 to 7 sentences per paragraph. All total, the length should be 300 to 500 words. The whole thing, not each paragraph. You need to be specific. You need to give examples from both passages. Don't just write about the stronger passage. Make sure you talk about the weaker passage too. You need to be organized and smooth in your writing. And a big part of that is they want to see you using transition words, which we will talk more about later. Quick review of how this section is graded. There are 3 main components they're going to look at. Your writing must be organized, your writing must follow the rules of written English, and you must prove which position is stronger using evidence from both passages. This section of the GED Language Arts test is worth 6 points, and there are 2 points per component. So, how are you going to prepare in advance? Because yes, you need to prepare in advance for this part of the test. It's 45 minutes, so you want to be as prepared as possible going in. Here's what you can do. First of all, watch my extended response videos so you know what to expect and have a solid strategy. Being prepared will make you feel less scared. Going in scared is going to inhibit your ability to write and think, and fear will slow you down. So you want to go in as prepared as possible. Make sure that you memorize both the notes template and the essay template I have provided. And I show those in my first video. I'm going to show them again in the second video. I'll show them again in the third video. I also have a nice PDF version that even has basically a fill-in-the-blank essay. I have that provided to my students, but I'm also going to try to upload that here to YouTube for anyone who is not one of my personal students, because I've noticed quite a few other people have been watching the videos. So make sure you memorize the notes template and the essay template. I know when I say memorize something, people get scared and they don't want to do it, but I promise you, if you memorize these 2 things, this will ensure that you cover all the essentials and that your essay is organized. Just memorizing these 2 tools should help you get at least 2 of the points. Now, it's still going to depend on your writing skill, but basically, you're almost guaranteed 2 points if you can do these things. Make sure that you do at least 2, preferably 3 practice essays. All right, so the first time you write a practice essay, take your time and just worry about the mechanics of writing a good essay. Your second time, start timing yourself. And you should be typing it rather than handwriting it when you get to your second attempt. The reason I say this is because you want the conditions to be as close as possible to what you're going to have on your test day. The more practice, the better and faster you'll be able to answer. And again, use a computer and time yourself. You also need to study hard for the language section of the test, because that will ensure that you get the points for following the rules of written English. There's 2 points for that, remember. Now, this is just a piece of advice from me, but one of the hardest things for you is going to be the time limit, because you only have 45 minutes to read 2 passages and write a response. So another thing I think you should work on is improving your typing speed. This is also a very good life skill, and it's a good college skill and career skill. There are a lot of free programs online to help you, so I would pick one and try to get yourself up to at least 40 words per minute. You may think because you text a lot that your typing speed's going to be fast, but if you're used to using a cell phone all the time, what you're going to be fast at is using your thumbs. You're not necessarily going to be a fast typer. And make sure that you practice with home row keys, because that's the best way to type, and try to learn to type without having to look at the keys. That is a huge speed advantage. So let's look deeper at how to fulfill the requirements. Remember, here's your 3 requirements. Let's look closer at this one. Your writing must be organized. Remember that is worth 2 of the 6 points for this section. So, how will you earn these points? First of all, begin with an introduction paragraph that clearly states which position is stronger. That's crucial. Then spend the next 3 paragraphs proving what you just said. Those are your body paragraphs. Make sure that you use transition words as you move between ideas and paragraphs. And again, I will go over transition words later in this video. Then end your essay with a conclusion paragraph that reviews what you just said. The best way that I can advise you to accomplish this is to use my 5-paragraph essay format. So this outline is great, it fulfills the requirements, and it's easy to do. Now, when I say to memorize this, I'm not talking about memorizing this whole thing, because I think some of you would faint at the thought of that. All I'm saying you need to memorize is the stuff that's in the black blocks. All right, so introduction, the 2 positions, why one position is stronger, why one position is weaker, conclusion. Those 5 things. Memorize those 5 things in order. When you get ready to start typing your essay, type those down really fast up on your screen and make each one of those a separate line. That way you've got your 5 paragraphs. This is what you're going to accomplish in each paragraph. When you get to start typing each paragraph, you just erase that part of the outline and instead type a paragraph there. These questions that I've got off to the side, these are intended to walk you through each of the paragraphs. So when you're practicing, use these questions to help guide you in your writing. If you do these in order, that will actually give you an organized and thorough paragraph. So just by following this outline, you will have accomplished 3 of the 4 things you need to do to get the organization points. All right? Now, you're probably wondering, how exactly do I say what someone's position is? That might not be something that you're accustomed to doing, especially if you've been out of school for a while. So, first of all, you got to find what the person's position is, right? You can usually find the person's position by looking at the last sentence of their first paragraph. And we're going to look at a couple of examples in just a minute, and I'll show you how you do this. So you find their position, and then you want to be very direct, state their position in 1 sentence in your essay. You could do this by typing, so-and-so argues that blah, blah, blah. Or maybe you could do, so-and-so's position is that blah, 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 blah. So-and-so argues in favor of blah, blah, blah. So-and-so argues against blah, 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 blah. All right, these are 4 different ways, fill in the blank, that you could state someone's position. Pick one, memorize it, and always use it. Seriously. This essay does not have to be pretty or creative. It just has to be organized and accomplish the requirements. You can be pretty and creative when you get to college. One little thing though. Usually the person's position is in the last sentence of the first paragraph. But sometimes Pearson likes to be really creative and fun on the GED, and they'll instead give you 2 emails to compare or 2 letters or something like that. So if they pull that on you, if you get a letter or an email as one of your passages that you read, sometimes the position will be the first or second sentence instead of the last sentence of the first paragraph. More formal things like a speech, it's pretty much always the last sentence of the first paragraph because that's considered the standard. All right. Let's look at an example and find the person's position. All right, so this is just the first paragraph taken from a sample passage. Electronic learning, or e-learning, was sold to many CEOs as the wave of the corporate future. There's no need to hire human beings to train staff managers, we're told. All the information you require can be accessed online at a reduced cost for the company and more flexible scheduling for employees. It sounded too good to be true, and it was. As one writer noted, most e-learning is nothing more than online lectures or course notes. To teach facts beyond basic skills, the person-to-person method is still more effective than any form of electronic learning. So, what is this person's position? Where do we find it? We look in the last sentence of the first paragraph, and sure enough, here's the person's position. To teach skills beyond basic facts, the person-to-person method is still more effective than any form of electronic learning. That's what this person is going to argue about, and that's what the rest of this passage will be about. All the further paragraphs are going to back up this argument the person is making. Now, how do we state this in our essay? Because remember, we have to state each person's position. So you're just going to reword this final sentence a little bit. You look up at the title of the passage, and right under it you should see the name of the person that this passage comes from. And you can say, Solomon Robles, which is the name of this person who wrote this passage, argues that person-to-person learning is more effective than electronic learning. You see, I basically just even copied down his words. I just reworded it ever so slightly so it made sense in my sentence. Easy peasy. Let's do one more example. So this is a totally different passage, totally different topic. As a nurse practitioner in a pediatric office, I had to complete extensive training and obtain a license before I could examine my first toddler. Many jobs, from barber to pilot, involve specific training. But for the most important job, raising children to be responsible adults, no training is required, and children in society suffer the results of this lack of knowledge. The time has come to correct this situation. Before they can be discharged from the hospital, first-time parents should be required to take parenting classes. So, where is this person's argument, their position? Once again, last sentence, first paragraph, and here's the person's position. This individual is going to argue that before they can be discharged from the hospital, first-time parents should be required to take parenting classes. And how do we put that into our own words for our essay? Kai Fernandez argues that first-time parents should be required to take parenting classes before being discharged from the hospital. So there I have stated this person's argument. Ooh, yes, I totally agree with this because... No. Remember, keep your own opinion to yourself. So, many of the topics that they will choose to have passages about are topics that you probably have your own opinion on. Don't put your own opinion in your essay. You have to stay out. This essay is only about what the two people who wrote these two passages are arguing. Got it? So what makes a position strong versus weak? Because that's the other big task you have to do, is you have to prove which position is stronger of the two positions. Well, here's some questions that you can ask yourself as you're reading a passage. Does the author use mainly facts or opinions? A strong argument has to have facts. A weaker argument is going to lean heavier on opinions. And we'll go over fact versus opinion in a little bit if that's a hard thing for you. Does the author have any verifiable personal experience related to the topic? Because this could be a form of evidence they could use. But why does this word verifiable matter? If a person is writing about their personal experience, it needs to be documented in some way. They have to be able to prove that it actually happened. So, wrote about it at the time, it's caught on video, there were photos, there were other witnesses. As long as it's reasonable that there could have been further witnesses, you can probably assume it's verifiable personal experience. Does the author make mainly specific statements or generalizations? And what we want are specifics. If an author is just writing generalizations, that's not a very good position. Does the author offer evidence to back up his or her claims? Evidence is essential. If there's no evidence, then the claim is not supported and it's no good. But quality matters. So later on in this video, I'll talk about how we can check the quality of evidence. And another thing to think about, does the author depend upon emotion? People often use emotion when they don't have the facts on their side because emotions are an easy way to manipulate people. You'll see this frequently in speeches too. There will be an appeal to emotion, and sometimes that makes a speech great. It's really interesting to listen to, but emotions are a way that people can be manipulated, and emotions can get in the way of facts. So a stronger position will not use emotion, or will only use it a little bit. Let's look further at what makes a strong position versus a weak position. A strong position. The author should have some level of expertise on this specific topic. So think back to those two introductory paragraphs that we looked at. That second one was written by an actual nurse who had experience working with children. That's expertise. The author should use mainly facts in a strong position. If the author uses opinions, they pick opinions from experts on this topic. An expert opinion is very, very different from the opinion of an average guy on the street or the opinion of the author. A strong position uses strong, specific, related evidence. If possible, the evidence should be recent evidence. If the evidence is really old, it might have been true back then, but it might not be true anymore. Especially when it's a passage about public policy, you need the evidence to be recent. They should avoid anecdotal evidence. It's okay to have some, but they shouldn't be leaning on it too heavily. Any personal experience needs to be verifiable. There's got to be some way that they could, if they needed to, prove that that experience really happened. And they should persuade through logical reasoning instead of through emotions. A weak position, on the other hand, the author typically lacks expertise on this specific topic. Author might use mostly opinions. When using opinions, the author has not picked opinions from actual experts. Uses little to no evidence. The evidence might be vague, too old, weak, or from questionable sources. They might use anecdotal evidence. They might use a lot of it. Any personal experience might not be something that could be verified. And they may persuade through emotions instead of logical reasoning. Now, unfortunately, when you get your two passages and you're taking your test, they're not going to give you a super obvious strong position and a super obvious weak position. They're probably going to give you two positions that both have strengths and weaknesses. They want you to actually have to do some thinking. So when you look at it this way, one of these is really obviously weak, one is really obviously strong. It's not going to be that obvious when you're taking your test. There will be strengths and weaknesses to both sides. You got to look at it and decide which is the strongest. Now, I keep bringing up transition words. What are transition words? First of all, what do they do? They help your reader understand that either a shift in topic is about to happen or a new paragraph is related to the one before it. You don't want to give your reader whiplash by transitioning from one idea to another without some kind of transition word or phrase in there. It's very unpleasant to a reader when there's not a good transition. Transition words also clarify and organize your writing by continuing your thoughts in a logical list order, placing emphasis on what you're about to say, adding to what you just said, or comparing or contrasting what you're about to say with what you just said. So that's a lot of work that transition words can do, which should help get across the idea that transition words are quite important. So, there are different types of transition words, and there's more than what I'm going to show you. I'm just giving you some examples. There are transition words that are related to order. They help keep things proceeding in an organized fashion. These are some of them. And as you can see, some of them are actually phrases like as previously stated. These are transitions that maintain order within your writing. Then you have transition words that add emphasis. Absolutely, assuredly, certainly. You also have transition words that are used for addition. You're going to add to what you just said. Additionally, blah, 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 blah. Moreover, blah, 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 blah. And you have transition words that help you to compare or contrast. Alternatively, one could assume, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, one should consider, blah, blah, blah. So this list is in my writing packet PDF. If you are one of my students personally, you have this packet or can get this packet from me. If you are not my student and you're watching this video, again, I will try to make this PDF packet available, linked somehow on YouTube for your use, because I'm nice. You must use transition words in your extended response. It is a requirement. So here's how you go about that. You need to start every single paragraph except your introduction with a transition word or transition phrase. The first sentence of each body paragraph should begin with an addition or order word from those columns. The reason, if you use an addition word, it shows that you're adding on to the same topic or point that you were discussing in the previous paragraph. And if you use an order word, it shows that this is a new topic or point that you're about to discuss. So it kind of helps the reader be able to expect what's coming. Your conclusion should begin with either an order or an emphasis word. And the reason you would use one of these two, an order word lets the reader know that this is the end. There's no further new information at this point. We're just going to quickly review what's been said and leave you. If you use an emphasis, it helps you revisit and re-emphasize key points that were presented in your essay. Additionally, oh look, a transition word. You also need to use transition words within your paragraphs, inside the paragraphs from sentence to sentence, to maintain a smooth, logical flow. So generously pepper your essay with transition words. Again, these are the order words and addition words. Any of these are great words for starting your body paragraphs. As previously stated, blah, 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 blah. Following that, blah, 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 blah. Apart from blah, 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 blah. Besides blah, blah, blah. Now, order and emphasis words. Any of these are ideal for starting your conclusion paragraph. You can literally say, in conclusion, blah, 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 blah. And for some of you, if you're a weaker writer, that's probably going to be your best bet, is just plan on starting your conclusion with in conclusion. Now, if you go on to college professors don't tend to like that way of starting a conclusion paragraph because they think it's a bit boring and maybe not up to a college standard of writing. But for the GED, go ahead and do that. Now, if you want to organize your points within a paragraph, start sentences with any of these order words. These are great for keeping things organized. If you want to add emphasis to something you are about to say, start your sentence with any one of these words. Absolutely, we should do blah, blah, blah. Notably, so-and-so says blah, blah, blah. If you want to add further information to the same point that you just made, start a sentence with one of these addition words. As well as blah, 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 blah. In addition, blah, blah, blah. And to compare or contrast what you're about to say with what you just said, use any of these comparing or contrasting words to start your sentence. So, there are a lot of transition words, and there are more transition words than what I've included here. If you tend to be a weaker writer, what you might want to do is pick a few transition words that sound good and are easy for you to remember and just stick to those. You might want to do first or firstly, second or secondly to start body paragraphs. Just find something that you'd be able to remember and memorize them and use those in your essay. If you're a little bit stronger of a writer, you can play around more with these. So we've covered how your writing must be organized. Let's look at the second criteria that's expected of you. Your writing must follow the rules of written English. And again, that's going to be worth 2 of the 6 points possible for this section of the GED test. So how will you earn these 2 points? You need to write in complete sentences with correct sentence structure. No sentence fragments, no run-on sentences. Good, solid sentences. Make sure the structure's right. Use correct punctuation. So every sentence needs to end in some form of punctuation, and usually that should be a period for this type of essay. Try to avoid ending a sentence with an exclamation point because you're not really writing that type of an essay. You don't really need any emotion or excitement in your answer. Make sure that you use commas. If the semicolon scares you, then don't use the semicolon. Capitalize the first word of every sentence. That's a big one. And if you're using people's names or the names of organizations, remember that those have to be capitalized. Proper nouns get capitalized. Use proper grammar. Do your best to spell words correctly. Make sure you know the difference between to, and to, as in to, too, two. Make sure you know what each of those are for. Another big one is the 3 theirs. There as in there versus there, they''re, and there, their. Those are not the same word. They're homophones, which means they sound the same, but they have a different meaning and people frequently mix them up. So your best way to earn these 2 points is by carefully studying for the language portion of the RLA test, the Reasoning Through Language Arts test. That same knowledge that you need for that section is needed for this particular criteria on your test. So I'm not going to talk further on this section because your studying is going to take care of that for you. So finally, your third criteria, you must prove which position is stronger using evidence from both passages. And again, 2 points possible. So how will you earn these points? You are going to clearly say which passage makes a stronger argument. And you're going to do it in one sentence. You want to make it really blunt and obvious. You're going to use exact details from both passages, to prove which one is stronger. You can directly quote from a passage if you need to. You can rewrite it in your own words if you want to. You're going to explain exactly why the weaker position is weaker. Explain which one is stronger, explain which one is weaker. You got to do both those tasks. Now, remember I said there's a notes chart that you need to memorize, and that's right here. The best way that you're going to get these 2 points is you need some organized notes on the passages. Don't skimp on this. Write good notes before you start writing the essay. This is going to help you. It's going to budget your time better. It will potentially save you. So, memorize this chart. And when I say memorize it, I just mean memorize that first column and then draw your chart to have a section for passage 1 and a section for passage 2. You don't need to memorize, summarize in one sentence, or the examples that I give. All right? So you need to remember position, credentials, facts, opinions, evidence, other strengths, other weaknesses. With the position, you're just going to summarize in one sentence what the person's position is for each passage. And write it the same way that you're going to type it in your essay, because that way, when you get ready to start typing your essay, you can just directly copy from your notes. It'll save you some time. For the credentials, I'm going to go over that more in just a second, but the person's education, their career, why they are qualified to speak on this topic. You might want to just write it down in a full, complete sentence, because again, then when you start typing your essay, you can just copy that directly and it'll save you some time. It's a good idea to go through and count all the facts that are used in each essay and just use tally marks, and do the same with opinions, because that right there might help you to see which essay is stronger, which passage is stronger. With the evidence, go through and look at what specific evidence each person uses and just list it, bullet points, in your notes chart. You can also think about other strengths and other weaknesses and just list them bullet point style. I'm going to explain this further in this video. So if there's any of these points that you're not clear on, like what is evidence, don't worry, I am about to explain. But memorize the notes chart and then ask for a piece of scrap paper when you start your essay and just write down this chart really quickly, and then you can fill it in, and that'll help you to do organized, useful notes. So, what are credentials and why do they matter? I have a little illustration to help us think about this. All right. You are camping. Imagine you've gone camping and you've just broken your leg and you are in a very remote area. There are 3 people with you who could help set your bone. There's Trevor, an insurance agent, Monica, an elementary teacher, and Sylvia, an orthopedic surgeon. Orthopedic surgeons are surgeons who operate on bones. So whom do you choose to set your leg? I would imagine there's probably a rather obvious choice that's popped into your head. Pretty easy decision. Only one person has the expertise to know how to correctly set your leg bone, Sylvia. Because of her credential of being an orthopedic surgeon, you automatically know that she knows lots about bones. Trevor and Monica, though very good people, do not have training or experience related to setting a broken leg. So, that right there is using credentials Credentials can strengthen a position. The qualifications, achievements, personal qualities, or aspects of a person's background that make them qualified to speak about a topic. That is a definition for credentials. So these could be things like their education. Did they study this topic or something related to it in school? Career. Is this topic related to what this person does professionally? Personal experience. Have events or factors in this person's life given them special knowledge about this topic? Or affiliation. Is this person connected with or a member of a particular group that has a relationship with this topic? For example, let's say the topic has to do with alcohol. Maybe this person is a volunteer with Alcoholics Anonymous. They would have a certain level of knowledge on the topic of alcohol, right? They would know about the addiction side. Or maybe they are affiliated with a brewers group. So they would know about what actually goes into a particular alcohol, how it's made, how to judge quality. And so that might help them speak on that topic. Sometimes, however, credentials could actually weaken a position. So you need to think about how someone in this career or with this affiliation may stand to gain if you believe their position over the other position. Are they trying to sell a product? Are they trying to get a law passed that directly or indirectly benefits them? Are they trying to gain a better position or get elected to a position? That's a big one. Are they automatically biased because of their personal beliefs? Now, keep in mind, these issues do not automatically mean that someone is wrong or lying, but they do mean that there is a strong motive to lie. There's a motive to exaggerate, or there's a motive to just not consider all evidence. So you should be extra vigilant in demanding evidence from someone in one of these positions. And that might be something good to write about in your essay, that so-and-so stands to gain directly from this topic, so their position could have a certain bias. They may not have considered all the evidence. That's something you could write about. Where do you find a person's credentials when you are taking the GED test and you're looking at the two passages? Usually, credentials will be listed right after the person's name, right under the title of the passage. Sometimes the name itself is actually a hint. So if a person has PhD after the name or doctor as part of their name, this person has a doctorate. Doctor could mean that they went to grad school and got a PhD or doctorate. It can also mean medical doctor. Either way, they've been in school for a dang long time. MA, MED, MS, MBA after the name, this person has a master's degree in addition to their bachelor's degree. So again, they've had extended education. They have specialized in some way. Other letters may appear after the name, and usually these are an educational credential. So usually when you see other letters after the person's name immediately, it can mean the person has a master's, a doctorate, or some other specialized training beyond a 4-year degree. And that could be important. Now, if you can't recognize what those particular letters mean, because frankly, there's a lot of them, you could just mention in your essay, based on the letters after this person's name, this person has some extended credentials and has been in school longer than just a 4-year degree. Sometimes the person will mention their career, their education, their expertise, etc. within the passage itself. So also pay attention to that. They might say, as a nursing home worker, I know firsthand, blah, blah, blah. As an elementary school teacher, I have personally witnessed, blah, blah, blah. So pay attention to the passage itself to see if you can glean information. So let's just practice real quick. What can you figure out about this person's credentials? So this is the top on a possible passage, source material number 1, and it's got the title, Game-Based Learning is Merely a Fad. It's got the name of the person that wrote it, Solomon Robles, EDD, professor of education at Winborn College. And then underneath, it's got workplace training journal. That's where this appeared, what he wrote this for. So let's just look at his name and the information by his name. Solomon Robles, EDD, professor of education at Winborn College. This, my friends, is his credentials. All right, EDD, letters after the name. This person has an advanced degree. Now, you may not be familiar with EDD. It's a doctorate of education. Even if you don't know what it specifically stands for, letters after the name indicate some kind of advanced degree or training. We also see that he is a professor of education. So, this person teaches about education, which means he teaches future teachers. He has an advanced degree related to education if he's going to be a professor of education. Also, if you see someone that says professor, that means they're what's known as a full professor. That's a relatively high position. Associate professor, assistant professor, adjunct professor, those are all lower. And we know where he teaches. So he is employed by a college. Sometimes it might be a college that you have some personal knowledge about. Winborn College, probably most of us don't really recognize that college or know anything about it. But if you saw that they were at, say, Harvard or Yale, that's an Ivy League. Those jobs are really competitive to get. So this person probably has to be pretty high up and pretty well qualified within their field to get that job. All right, but I do have to give you a warning. Never assume that just because a source has great credentials, they're automatically correct. Smart people can be wrong, and smart people can sometimes offer up weak arguments. Sometimes smart people lie. So the credentials are something that you can talk about. They're a positive often, but they don't automatically mean that you just believe everything this person says. Next, how do I identify if something is a fact or an opinion? That is a crucial skill, especially when you're taking the GED. What is a fact? A fact is a statement that can be verified. It can be proven to be true or false through objective evidence. An opinion is a statement that expresses a feeling, an attitude, a value judgment, or a belief. It cannot be proven to be true or false through objective evidence. It may feel true for some people, but it can also feel false for other people. Therefore, it is an opinion. Let's see some examples of facts and opinions. The Crimson Tide are the best football team in the SEC. That is my opinion. Sadly, it is not a fact because I can't prove it through objective evidence. Now, I could make a really good argument in favor of this opinion, but I can't absolutely prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. If I wanted to give a fact that would lead you to maybe agree with my opinion, I could say the Crimson Tide are the only team to win an SEC title in every single decade since the SEC formed. And that is a fact. We can go back and we can prove it. We can look at historical records and see, yes, they did this, and yes, they're the only team to do it. All right, another opinion, and another opinion which I myself hold, is that Korean food is delicious. I love it. But while this is my opinion, it is not a fact that we can absolutely prove. Literally, all you need to do is find one person that doesn't think Korean food's delicious, and that would prove that it's not a fact. Here's a fact, though. Korean food is often spicy because of the red pepper paste used in many recipes. That's a fact. We can verify it. We can look up Korean recipes and see, yes, they use this red pepper paste. It comes from a very spicy pepper. It would indeed make the food spicy. Bruce Springsteen is a more talented musician than Bono. I hold this opinion. But No matter how important this opinion is to me, it doesn't make it a fact. A fact would be if I said, Bruce Springsteen often incorporates folk elements into his rock music. That's a fact. We can look at his music or listen to his music, and we can actually prove that he does this. The Toyota Highlander is a very comfortable car to drive. I definitely feel comfortable driving mine, but that doesn't make it a fact. It's an opinion still. A fact would be the Toyota Highlander has many safety features. And let's do one more. If Anne Frank had lived, she would be a great grandmother today. I picked this one because I saw someone post this on Facebook. Sadly, this is an opinion because Anne Frank died tragically young. You have no way of knowing if she would still be alive today. You don't know if she would have married, if she would have gone on to have children and therefore be able to have great-grandchildren. This is based on a hypothetical, so it's an opinion. But a fact would be Anne Frank was born in 1929. It's a fact because it's a historical truth. We can go back and actually look it up. So, when you're thinking about facts versus opinions, a fact has to be something that can be proven true or false through objective evidence. An opinion cannot be proven definitely true or false. A fact uses language free from emotion, personal interpretation, or connotation. If you're not sure what connotation is, I actually have a video lesson about it that you might want to watch. An opinion uses language that has emotions, personal interpretation, or connotation. Not all the time, but it may use that language. A fact frequently includes numbers, measurements, statistics, and/or dates. Facts often have these specifics, and that's what makes it easy to check them. But an opinion can mean different things to different people. And an opinion may use value judgment words and/or comparisons. A value judgment would be something like better, best, worse, worst. With facts, you do need to watch out for some things. Watch out for facts that don't actually relate directly to the topic. Sometimes people do this purposely or accidentally in an argument. They find a great fact, but if you actually think about it, it doesn't actually connect directly to their topic. Also beware of false facts. So a fact that's not true is a false fact. And facts that someone is interpreting incorrectly. Sometimes the fact is actually correct. It's the way the person is interpreting it. It doesn't mean what they think it means. Predictions are considered opinions because they can't be verified right now. So anytime someone uses a hypothetical future situation, that's going to fall under opinion. We don't know for positive certainty that it's going to happen that way. And while reliance on opinions weakens a position, expert opinions do carry some weight. Expert opinions are not the same as ordinary opinions. It would probably be better to call them expert judgments. More on that later. So here are some words to watch out for, because if you see any of these words, there's a really good chance that you're dealing with an opinion. Best, great, beautiful, worst, terrible, bad, should, must, good, strangest, disgusting, wonderful, pretty, most, lovely, delicious. There's many, many more words, but these are just some common ones. You see one of these words in a sentence, it's probably an opinion. Besides facts and opinions, there's one other thing in the same vein that you need to watch out for, and that is generalizations. A generalization is a broad statement about a subject based on information, observations, and experiences. Now, a valid generalization is backed up with evidence, such as statistics. And so if someone uses a valid generalization in their position, as long as they provide evidence, that actually might be useful to proving their position. But a faulty generalization is where someone jumps to a conclusion with incomplete or too little information. For example, something happens twice, so they claim that it always happens. Or two things happen together and they assume that that means the two things are necessarily related or that one caused the other. That's not accurate. So if you spot a generalization, make sure it has evidence to back it up. If it does, it makes a position stronger. If it doesn't, it makes a position weaker. Now, what do we mean when we say evidence? Well, without evidence, it's no good. Evidence gives credibility and authority to a position, but not all evidence is equally good. We have to take a careful look at evidence. Without evidence, there is no proof that anything this person has said is actually true, no matter how well educated or likable the person is. Even if you agree completely with what this person is saying, if they don't have evidence, there's no proof that what they're saying is true. There are 4 types of evidence in particular that you should watch for: testimonial, anecdotal, statistical, hypothetical. And I gave you a little acronym, TASH, to remember the 4 by. A good way to write about evidence in your essay would be to figure out what type of evidence it is. And you could say, this particular evidence is an example of testimonial evidence, blah, 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 blah. That might help you if you're struggling to think of things to write. So let's look at these closer. All right, testimonial evidence. Testimonial evidence would be something like a quote from an expert. It shows that this is not just one person's opinion, the opinion of the person writing the position, but it's also the judgment of someone who has studied and specialized in the subject. So what do you think? Is testimonial evidence weak or strong? It's fairly strong. Now, it still has possible flaws because think about court cases. You can find an expert to testify just about anything. So you still need to consider the credentials of the expert if you can find any. But a quote from an expert, or an expert opinion as it's sometimes called, is probably better considered an expert's judgment. An expert has read a lot on their topic, they've seen a lot, they've studied a lot, so their opinion actually holds some weight. It could be used as a form of evidence. All right, the next one is anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence is personal experience. So it's a story about something that happened to you, a story that happened to someone else that was told to you, or an observation that you made personally. What do you think? Would this be strong evidence or weak evidence? Unfortunately, anecdotal evidence is rather weak. It's hard to verify it. And just because something happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen more than once. So an anecdotal evidence doesn't really prove anything. Now, if it's capable of being verified, it makes the evidence stronger. And so then it might be a moderately strong piece of evidence to use. For example, if you're reading a position about what the drinking age should be, and one position is written by a professor who had 5 students killed by drunk driving incidents, that's anecdotal evidence, but it does make their position stronger. All right, statistical evidence. We love numbers. Say that to yourself all the time. We love numbers. Actual numbers, percentages, surveys, polls. Statistics can demonstrate how prevalent and serious something is or isn't. And statistics are specific. We love statistics. So, this is strong evidence. Usually. Even though this is still great evidence, still consider the source. Also, make sure that it actually connects directly with the topic. Sometimes people cite a really great statistic as evidence, but it doesn't actually connect to their topic the way they think it does. Lastly, hypothetical evidence. Hypothetical evidence is a what-if scenario. It's used to get the reader to consider possibilities. It appeals to the reader's common sense and their lived experience. What do you think? Would that be strong or weak evidence? Pretty weak. So, problems with hypothetical evidence is that, first of all, it's not provable. It's not a fact because it hasn't actually happened. And when you use hypothetical evidence, sometimes it puts the reader in the position of an expert because you're judging whether or not this sounds valid to you. And you might not actually be an expert. You might not be very well educated. You might not have seen a lot of the world or experienced a lot of things. You're probably not the best expert to be weighing this topic. When you are assessing the quality of evidence, ask yourself, is it recent or old? Because that can matter. How large was the sample size for statistics? In other words, how many people did they actually look at to get this data? Or if it's a statistic about plants, how many plants did they study? How many diseases did they look at? How many people with this disease did they look at? That's a sample size. Is the evidence directly related to the topic? I keep coming back to this. It's almost like this is an issue that you should think about. Does the evidence come from good, reliable source? If it's anecdotal or hypothetical, does it fit with the way the world normally works? In other words, is it common sense? Could it be repeated with the same conclusion? Hypothetical and anecdotal evidence is not particularly strong evidence, but if it does fit with how the world works and it's good common sense, well, it might have a little bit of validity then. But remember, even numbers should be questioned. As much as we love numbers, we can't always take them for granted even. Let's imagine that you're watching the news and they were to say, our network's most recent poll shows that 70% of Americans plan to vote for Dr. Evil for president in November. Oh my gosh, we're totally doomed! I need to fly to Canada ASAP! How can so many people fall for that man? Panic time! But if we look at the teeny tiny print under the headline that no one can actually read, we might learn a little bit about how this information was gathered. This poll was conducted by calling 1,000 landline phones in Iowa during the middle of the day and asking the people who actually answered the phone if they would rather vote for Dr. Evil or live in a dictatorship ruled by Thanos. If you were to see that, this information calls into question the fact that 70% of Americans are voting for Dr. Evil. For one thing, is this in fact 70% of Americans? No, this poll called 1,000 landline phones only in one state, Iowa, specifically during the middle of the day. Now, do you think 1,000 people answered the phone? Probably not, right? And they called landline phones. Do most people have landline phones? No. So who would have landline phones still? Probably older people. So it's probably all people from one specific group within society. And they called in the middle of the day. Are people home in the middle of the day, especially for a landline? No. A lot of people work. So there's a good chance that those were mainly retirees or stay-at-home moms. So it's not a very representative sample size because you probably got people that are in a fairly similar demographic. And look at what question they asked people. They didn't ask, who are you voting for or who do you want to vote for? They asked, would you rather vote for Dr. Evil or live in a dictatorship ruled by Thanos? Now, given those two options, a lot of people would probably choose Dr. Evil because you have a better survival rate. That doesn't mean they actually want to vote for Dr. Evil. Doesn't mean they like him. Just means it was the better of the two options. Now, this is an extreme funny example, but just goes to show you have to question even numbers. So if possible, always check the sample size. The sample size for this poll was 1,000 landline phones, but They asked the people who actually answered the phone. And remember, 1,000 calls would not mean that 1,000 people answered. So the actual sample size is probably a lot smaller than 1,000. You need to consider other key details about the sample group. Like in this case, it's people who would be home during the day and would own a landline phone. That narrows down what type of people that would be. You have to think about who gathered the information. So if the Society to Elect Dr. Evil is the one carrying out the poll, well, they might have had a little bit of bias. They might have asked questions in a way that would prejudice the results. You have to think about the purpose of gathering this information. Is this a poll that exists mainly to scare people? And for polls, what was the exact question or set of questions that was asked? Because that would influence what answer is given. Remember, this news report said 70% of Americans said they're voting for Dr. Evil. But the actual question was, would you rather vote for Dr. Evil or live in a dictatorship ruled by Thanos? The question matters. What are some other strengths or weaknesses I could look for? Some other ones. This is not an exhaustive list, but a good argument uses specifics. So pay attention to that. Specific numbers, specific examples, specific statistics. As I said at the beginning of this video, watch out for emotion or appeals to emotion, because people often turn to emotions when they don't have the facts on their side. Emotions are also a way to manipulate the reader. So is the writer trying to make you feel something? How can you know that? Well, here's a little hint. Look at any adjectives or adverbs used in the passage, because those might give an indication. They might display an opinion or a bias. Also think about, does the writer of the position make any assumptions? In other words, do they assume anything to be true without actual proof? Do they make assumptions about the reader, about what social class you're in, or about how you would feel on a particular topic? So in short, trust nothing. Verify, 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 and be critical. Thanks for watching. And in part 3, we will write a sample essay together, which I hope you'll find helpful.